Hi, everybody. I'm Jay Julio Vela for the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. We present to you Reasonable Doubt. We have a very special guest today in our series of the individuals who are racing for the Harris County District Attorney's spot. With me, very special guest, Miss Carvana Cloud. Hello.
Hi, JV. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. Thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.
How's the campaign?
Campaign's going well. We're gaining more and more momentum every day. We are running a very strong race. It's a hotly contested primary, and we're just excited to be on the ballot and talking to the people.
Have you ever ran for anything public office in your life?
No, this is my first foray into politics.
Where are you from?
I'm from Houston, born and raised in Acres Homes on the north side of town.
Acres Homes?
Acres Homes, yes.
Wow.
Yes, so I'm a north side girl.
Wow.
Yes.
I got a few people from out there. But with that being said, you stick in Texas your whole life? You move around?
I grew up in Acres Homes. I attended schools, HISD schools, and then I went to Kincaid for high school. I was very fortunate to have a scholarship to do that. And after I left high school, I decided that I wanted to go see another part of the world, of the country. And so I went to Greencastle, Indiana, and that's where I went to college.
That's what I was thinking. I had heard that you had left the state for a little bit.
Yeah, I did. I went to DePaul University in Greencastle, Indiana.
How was that?
It was very different than Texas, but it was amazing. I grew up really quickly, and I had a real tough childhood. And so I wanted to get out of Houston, out of Texas, and just kind of do something for me. I wanted to experience, life on my own. So I went far.
So you went to Indiana?
I did. Well, and let me just be honest, I got an amazing scholarship. And so, I had to go where the money was as well. But I wanted a small liberal arts school, and I was very fortunate to get a scholarship, and I majored in Spanish there, and they had an amazing Spanish program. So it fit the bill. So it worked.
Well, vamos a hablar español.
Claro que sí.
Oh, yeah. So
JV, soy bilingüe.
So let me ask you this. Are you going to be asking victims if they're citizens in order to dismiss their case?
Absolutely not.
I'm kidding.
Stop
good
it.
Answer. Good
answer.
That's
softball.
Good. I should have asked Miss Ogg that last week, but I didn't. People are saying I was a little bit light on her. Let's talk about Miss Ogg and the current district attorney's office. Okay, so you leave the district, you get brought on. It was a big deal when they announced your name to be as part of the office, the current administration, and head up a division, right?
Right.
So what division was that?
It was the Family Criminal Law Division.
And when you came in there, you were a big name. It was one of those, Miss Ogg's or DA Ogg's gonna bring in individuals who can do good jobs. And quite frankly, I did see a lot of changes within that division. Mm-hmm. Okay, I did.
Good.
I saw a lot more giving line prosecutors a little bit more decision making.
Good.
Right?
Good.
I did.
Exactly.
I did see that.
Yeah.
And then you're there. Did you go anywhere else? Did you move to any other upper brass positions you were already up at the upper brass, but...
I came in as a division chief of the Family Criminal Law Division, and in the summer of 2019, June or July, I was promoted to bureau chief of the Special Victims Bureau. So I was promoted and actually had more than one division. I was responsible for several divisions: domestic violence, human trafficking, sexual assault, animal cruelty, and child abuse. So quite a few.
Before you going into the district attorney's office, what were you doing?
I was a criminal defense attorney.
We all know that.
Yeah.
That's what's called a softball. And so what made you decide to go work in the district attorney's office?
Yeah, to leave my practice.
Right. I mean, that's a big deal.
It is. And so you have to know a little bit about me, right?
Talk to us.
Let me talk to you a little bit about me. So I started in the DA's office in 2005. I just finished a clerkship with Judge George Hanks when he was on the First Court of Appeals. And I went to the DA's office, bright-eyed, bush-tailed as a young lawyer. And I was there working really hard, went up the chain and all the way way to felony and ended my career there in the public integrity unit, actually, as a felony 2 prosecutor. I left the office because the offices at that time, it was a different place, and
Sure.
it was no longer a place that I felt that appreciated my talent and my skills. So I was very excited about opening the Cloud Law Firm and doing that. But I always wanted to make sure that the DA's office was reformed and it looked different and that we did things better. I always knew that there was room for improvement. And so when Kim Ogg announced her candidacy in 2016, a lot of us were very excited to usher in what we thought would be a new era of reform. And I was one of her main supporters. And that's something that a lot of people do know, and some, I guess, are finding out for the first time. But a lot of people do remember me out there knocking on doors, supporting her, because I really wanted to make sure that the office was, committed to reform. I was excited about things like bail reform, getting prosecutors, giving them the discretion back, things that had been taken away prior to 2016 and the prosecutors were complaining about, and things that made our job as criminal defense attorneys much harder. So I was excited to be able to, so when she got elected and she asked me to come back, at first I said no, because I didn't want to. I enjoyed my flexibility. I enjoyed being a criminal defense attorney, but I couldn't ignore the opportunity to come back and be a real agent of change and to assist in that process. So I accepted the position of the division chief of the Family Violence Division, and I went back.
What are some of the things that that made you believe that this was the right decision? And then ultimately the follow-up is going to be, what made you decide that you're going to leave and run?
Sure. So I guess the first part of that question, as a criminal defense attorney, I was very, very, very frustrated. Oftentimes when it represented folks, for example, I had a young African-American, a young kid who was charged with possession of marijuana. I asked for pretrial diversion, and they told me no. But I had another colleague who represented a white kid, and he did get pretrial intervention. I saw different disparities as a defense attorney as far as what type of diversion opportunities or sentences some folks got versus others. The morale was low in the office. I didn't think things were like they were supposed to, and there were just too many disparities, and I wasn't really pleased with the direction of the office at that time.
Even you as an upper brass, though, did you feel like you couldn't effectuate that change from your position?
And let me clarify, I just described my tenure before I came.
Pardon.
In 2017. Okay, so now just fast forward.
Well, right, everybody was pretty bad back then. Okay.
Right, so
everybody
that was
in that administration was bad.
So
not everybody, but
so
we all get it.
When Kim said she was going to, advocate for bail reform, more diversion opportunities, that made me excited. That inspired me, and that's why I decided to go back. I wanted to be a part of that type of change, right?
Sure.
So that's why I went back. Now, fast forward, once I got to the office, we did start off in that way. We started off trying to be very progressive and reform-minded, but then all of a sudden it switched. Things changed. Instead of us being committed to moving forward on reform issues, we kind of went back and started, focusing on what made the police happy or what looked better in the media versus what actually was the right thing to do. And that's staying true to the principles that she actually ran on. And it is very important. I want everybody to know something. It's very hard to stay in a situation. It's easy to leave when you don't like something. You can just quit and leave. But for 3 years, I stayed, and I was a voice of, I was trying to perpetuate that change, trying to encourage that, trying to move the ball forward to keep us on that progressive agenda, making sure prosecutors were trained, making sure we had diversity in the office. So at every major juncture where, things needed to be changed in the office or where we were reviewing old antiquated policies, I was right there advocating for that change. And many times that really ruffled some people's feathers in the administration.
Well, I want to clarify, I do think that there was a big change, obviously, when Ogg came in. I do think that there were good prosecutors in there. I don't want to misspeak and do some big over cloud, and no pun intended, no blanket, right? But when Kim came in, Miss Ogg came in and she did the Bloody Friday or whatever it was, everybody felt that there was going to be a big change. And then so in come Miss Ogg, and in comes her new wave. And so you're there, and I mean, you were up there, though.
I was.
You were up there.
Right.
And even at the upper echelons, the brass at the DA's office, you're saying that you ruffled feathers in regards.
Oh, absolutely. Let me
what
tell you
ways? Talk to
something.
us about that.
Being at the table and being up there doesn't mean that you always have a voice, okay?
Well, otherwise you get fired, right?
Well, and that's exactly right. Well, you know, and I didn't feel like my voice was always heard. I am an extremely opinionated, bold reform attorney. And I really was pushing, like I did when I helped to get her elected. I wanted to actually keep that promise throughout the administration. For example, I led the domestic violence division. One of the main programs I started there was the domestic abuse response teams called DART. DART actually pairs social workers with police officers, and they actually respond to domestic violence crime scenes. It's a pilot program that I started with the Houston Police Department. They're actually still doing that. It's turned out to be very successful. I started that program because I looked at the number of women that were dying in Harris County. Domestic violence homicides were up, and the majority of those victims were women of color. So that hit home to me in a major way, especially since my mother is a domestic violence survivor. So I have a passion for definitely helping all people that are affected by domestic violence. When I brought that idea up initially, it was met with quite a bit of opposition. It's definitely a different way of approaching domestic violence investigation and prosecution, but research shows that that type of model, a very trauma-informed, victim-centered model, is actually what really supports victims of domestic violence and helps us to be able to investigate and prosecute those cases. But because it was different, it wasn't what we had traditionally done, it was not welcomed immediately. And I had to jump through a whole lot of hoops to actually get that done.
Well, why do you suppose? Why do you suppose that was?
I think it's because change is hard for some people. Commitment to the status quo and staying the same sometimes really just makes more people feel comfortable. You have to think about the district attorney's office, the structure of the office, the way the office has been run has really not been changed for forever. And so we were coming in, I was coming in with drastically new ideas about how to effectuate justice on behalf of crime victims. And that was different and that was scary for some people. But that's to me what reform is about. You can't be scared to embrace, especially when you have research that shows these ideas would work.
But didn't DA Ogg come in there saying, I mean, the reform or the progressive candidate? I mean, were you met with pressure to not implement these kind of ideas from other brass at the DA, or was it funding, or what do you think it was? Or
I think it was a combination of both. It was other brass, and it was also a lack of funding. But I went out and got a grant to do it. I mean, because I know that we have limited resources. Don't get me wrong. I understand that. But it was the concept that was challenged even before the actual implementation. But it was almost like, you know, this is just way too progressive. You're taking us too fast. But that's what I signed up for, right? That was one idea. And then the other idea was, you know, when she came and asked for more prosecutors at the beginning of last year, before she actually made the request to Commissioner's Court, we had spent time, some of the division chiefs, coming up with a different way to restructure the office. And I led the charge on that, trying to maybe, you know, decentralize the office from not having so many cases come into the trial bureau, but be spread out throughout the office in different smaller units. That way we could even out prosecutor caseloads and they can really focus on violent crimes. That was not met with any type of support. It was very disheartening. So instead of trying to look and see how we can improve it and make the lives of our prosecutors better, it was just a hard no. We've always done it this way. The trial bureau is the best way to operate the office. Let's just move forward. And I was disappointed in it. So it was constantly different types of initiatives and things that I thought and others could make the office better, but they were not embraced.
Was it odd that a lot of the upper brass were former defense attorneys? I mean, they've been prosecutors, right? But then they become defense attorneys, and then you're sitting at a table with individuals who've seen both sides. Was it surprising to you that some of these progressive changes were met with opposition, or?
Absolutely. It was surprising and it was extremely frustrating because we all came from, like you said, most of us were, well, all of us, we were defense attorneys and had been prosecutors before for the most part. So I didn't understand it and I felt like a fish out of water. I felt very alone at times.
How did District Attorney Ogg come to you and ask you to be part of the team? Because I remember it was a surprise when you joined the office. I mean, it was like, oh, wow. But then everybody said, okay, cool. Like, Carvana's cool. She knows what's going on. She can do some things. How did you end up getting that position? And it's, I mean, I'm not asking for details about it, but I'm asking, like, how does one end up going back to the office? Were you best friends with Miss Ogg, or how did that work?
Well, and I met Kim when I was campaigning for her. I definitely was not. We were not friends before. I didn't know her.
Sure.
We didn't practice together. I mean, there's a significant age difference there. But no, I campaigned for her. I beat the streets for her, right?
Yeah.
I gave her credibility in my neighborhood, amongst my peers, my network, because I really believed in the message that she put out, which was being the reform candidate. And so I'm not exactly sure how she came to making the invitation, but she called me and she asked me. And like I said, initially I didn't want to go, but it's something that I talked to my husband about. And we really felt like that was an opportunity to really do something historical. That office hadn't been run by Democrats in over 40 years, and the message resonated with our beliefs. And so I went.
And, okay, so what do you think about diversity in the office? I think it's more diverse than it was. I mean, I remember walking in the courtroom and I'd be like, okay, one of them's not like the other. And then, like, I think it's more diverse, but, and there's no denying you coming in at upper brass. I think you might have been the only minority on the table.
No, she brought in Vivian King,
pardon.
Yvonne Taylor. She brought Yvonne Taylor in as well. So the diversity in the office has drastically improved.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
I'm always going to state facts. But I will tell you and I'm very proud of that, because when I was a prosecutor back in 2005, we could count on two hands the amount of African-American prosecutors, for example, in the office. And it really didn't get over 10 to 12. And if it got over that, people started wondering, what's going on? Which one of us is getting ready to get fired? Because, it just... That's all, that was allowed to be there. But I think increasing the diversity of this office has been refreshing, and it's been something that this administration has been committed to. I am concerned about the experience and the level of diversity in the top brass, though, because that is important. Almost equally as important as bringing in line prosecutors, right?
Sure.
Because you need to make sure you have a diverse management staff to support and train the prosecutors. And just like the prosecutor's office in the trenches needs to reflect the community, so does that management as well.
Sure.
And so that is important to continue to maintain. But you also have to think about, you can recruit diverse candidates, but you also need a plan in place to retain them.
Sure.
And to make sure that as they are matriculating through the office and growing and developing as young prosecutors, that they feel safe, they feel supported, and there's work to do there. There's definitely work to do there.
Did you feel when you were I guess this is a softball, when you were a prosecutor there, I assume you didn't really feel that support?
As a baby prosecutor?
As a baby prosecutor.
No, not at all.
Think so.
No,
Right.
not at all. And one of the things that I pride myself on is making sure that I took care of prosecutors, especially prosecutors of color, to make sure that they did feel okay. I mean, we grew up in a time in the prosecutor's office where, you didn't always get the good voir dire. Your chief didn't always sit with you in trial, sometimes, that was tough. And so we had to band together to support each other. And now, it's definitely much more open and it's different, but it is very important that folks feel supported and that there is some type of mentor-mentee type of relationship just throughout the office period, but especially for prosecutors of color. That's very important.
So you're in the office, you're proposing these ideas. I believe that at least the assault family member cases and that division improves. I do. I mean, I'm in the trenches. All of us are. I think it does improve. I think sometimes it gets a bad rap because there's a lot of cases in Harris County. And there's a lot of bureaucracy. But I think overall, under your direction, the assault family division improved, and you have a lot of great prosecutors that have come out of there.
They're wonderful.
I mean, they're up in the district courts now, and they're from I've seen them progress, and they are great. But then all of a sudden, Carvana Cloud's running for the district attorney's office. Everybody wants to know, like, did you walk into Kim's office and be like, I'm out, peace? Or like what in the world happened? It was shocker. It was like, Carvana's running, and and you didn't come in early either. I guess you filed maybe November?
Filed in, I filed December 5th.
Right.
I started running in November.
Everybody was like, what? Who's running? And everybody said, whoa, are you kidding me? Like, what happened? Was there like this big fight in the office? And then you're gone. And then now you're running.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know about that.
Yeah.
Tell us about. So what happened? So you say you're just gonna run? I mean, what happened?
So this is what happened. After 3 years of being very frustrated with a dysfunctional office, what I call a lack of leadership, high turnover,
Sure.
Low office morale, and a rejection and a kind of departure from true progressive reform philosophy, from the true progressive reform philosophy, I just couldn't take it anymore. I wanted to be true to my word, to the oath that I took as a prosecutor to seek justice for everybody. And when the DA came out in her opposition against misdemeanor bail reform, for me, that was the last straw. I talked about, just briefly here with you, some of the ideas that weren't accepted. When you're not running the show, it's always going to be some things that your boss may or may not take. You know, you may bring her an idea, she may not like it, she may like this one, she may not like that one. But the opposition to misdemeanor bail reform to me was so offensive. As a mother of a young black boy and a daughter and married to a black man who's been racially profiled, stopped for driving while black, I just could not understand or comprehend why a progressive DA would say no or oppose a decree that does nothing but facilitate people coming to court, help get them to court to stand for whatever they're accused of, and seeks to reform the system by balancing the scales. For far too long, our system has been so prosecutor state heavy with all the resources of the great state of Texas, where the defendants either have to fend for themselves, or if they can't afford a lawyer, sometimes, court appointeds would be appointed. But, we just got to the point, less than 10 years ago, we now have a public defender's office, right? And so for so long, the scales have not been balanced. And I saw the misdemeanor bail reform settlement as an opportunity to do that. See, as a prosecutor, I don't just look at the role of the prosecutor as just being one to prosecute cases and work for victims. That is definitely the priority. But you have to balance the scales of justice. And you really can't pick one or the other, because we also have to make sure that we're preserving the rights of the accused. And that means making sure people are not held in jail and languishing in jail for inordinate amounts of time, or because they couldn't afford it. The Constitution says you're innocent until proven guilty, and people have a right to bond, and reasonable bond, especially in misdemeanor cases. And so that, for me, was a deal breaker. And I did not want to stand. It would have required me to compromise my integrity and go against my beliefs. And I didn't want to do that. And so I left the office, and that was my decision to do. And it was nothing that I discussed with anybody but my husband. So people are saying, oh, you've been planning this, you've been plotting this. No, it wasn't like that at all. And so it's important that I tell my own story and that I tell the truth. And my truth is that I did not want to be frustrated any longer. I did not want to compromise my beliefs and my integrity, and I could no longer support her philosophy and her initiatives. And so when you find yourself in that predicament, you need to make a decision. And that decision for me was to leave. And even when I left, which is why I didn't file until later, I thought about, why do you really want to do this? Is this something you really want to do as far as putting my name on the ballot? And it became crystal clear. I talked to some trusted friends, colleagues, and I know that I have the experience and the qualification to do this job. And honestly, I had been asked to consider it before, but it's not something that I really did up until, this past fall. So,
do you think that you can do a better job than District Attorney Ogg right now?
I do.
And why?
I do, because I think the main reason is because I understand why reform is needed. And see, I understand that the job of a prosecutor is so much more expansive than what has traditionally been done in Harris County. Again, we have focused, this office has been so focused on prosecuting cases and keeping the bad guys in jail, and that's it. And we've tangentially thought about, the rights of the accused and all of that, or that's something the defense attorney is going to worry about. But when a prosecutor takes the oath to seek justice, you have to take both into consideration. I don't think the administration has ever really truly embraced criminal justice reform because they don't really know what it means. It requires a prosecutor to atone and take responsibility for their role in the inequities and the racial disparities that historically have been present in our system. For example, our reliance on mass incarceration, a cash bail system that keeps people in jail. We have been taught as Harris County District Attorney prosecutors that locking people up keeps the community safe. That's a myth. That's not true. I understand that, and so I am able then to take that understanding and then work with prosecutors, stakeholders, law enforcement to educate them on what's right and then figure out how that looks in everyday practice. You can't just say you're about reform and not know how to apply it into our daily walk. And that's why I am going to be a better district attorney. I also have the temperament to be an effective district attorney. One of the things that was very frustrating over this last 3 years was watching the district attorney constantly being battled with different agencies, whether it's commissioner's court, law enforcement, probation, the judges. It's almost as if the DA's office is on an island all alone, and we cannot operate in a silo like that.
I've never seen so many law enforcement agencies go toe-to-toe and against their own district attorney.
Exactly.
I've never even heard that.
Exactly.
I mean, it's almost like, what are we watching? It's like district attorney saying one thing, the police union's pissed off at district attorney, other police chiefs are pissed off at district attorney responds and does something. Granted, I'm not at the upper level brass of district attorney. I'm not a politician, and because I've said too many things on this show, I could probably never run for office. But I do see that.
You have to have a certain temperament, and you have to be, I'm a consensus builder. I enjoy working with other people, other partners, and really, look forward to the challenge of being at the table with folks who we might not agree on everything, working through that process to come to a conclusion or to help us reach our goal without yelling, screaming, and fighting and pointing fingers. The community needs that. They deserve that. They demand that. They put us in office so we can represent them. And if we're not working together and instead working against each other, we're working counter to what the people want and need, and that does not facilitate justice.
Well, let's talk about what the people want and need. You say the people want and need reform. What kind of reforms are you talking about?
The main source of reform, I think, is definitely, I'm going to continue to say and place at the top of my list, our need to not be so reliant on a pretrial detention and a cash bail system that keeps people in jail simply because they cannot afford it. We have to understand as a community, as a criminal justice community, the importance of looking at bail by looking at each case on a case-by-case individualized basis and inserting that human element back into the system, understanding that people who commit crimes are human beings and that they have a backstory. So it's not just about the offense that they've committed that's currently in front of us, but it's also about taking into account, like they do in the federal system, their childhood, adverse childhood experiences, their level of education, etc., and melding that all together to figure out what is the best result, how can we best allow them to be released in the community where they're not posing a threat to the victims or the greater community.
Does the district attorney's office have that kind of power? What are you going to do, not oppose the PR bond? They're already not doing that.
So, well, not all the time.
Not all the time. Let's talk about that.
But bail is a judicial function. At the end of the day, judges determine the amount of bail and conditions, but please make no mistake about it. We all know that the prosecutor makes very strong recommendations, whether at intake, in front of the PC judge, or even at that bench, right?
Right. Yeah,
And
sure.
one of the things that I will do is I will make sure that that prosecutor's discretion manual that prosecutors use to help guide their decisions has more of a presumption, explains the need to have a presumption for personal recognizance bonds and release versus caging people like they're animals in those cases where appropriate. Now, I want to be very clear. This is why you have to say we need individualized case-by-case review, because if somebody is charged with an aggravated robbery and it's a serial offense or serial rapist, mass murderer, I'm not talking about those types of cases. Felony bail reform is being, it's a case that's being litigated right now. I'm not here to discuss the details of that, but I think we have to change the way we think. And so setting clear guidelines and helping the prosecutors understand in what situations require PR bonds, especially when there is no flight risk or there is no, demonstrated, threat to public safety, then we need to let people out of jail. All right. So that's the type of reform I'm talking about. I'm also talking about diversion programs. And I know people say, well, we have a lot of diversion programs already. Here's the deal with the current diversion programs. They're expensive.
Yep.
Which, a lot of people can't afford them.
And especially, you're indigent. Let's say you're indigent and you're trying to get it. The paying for the program, it ends up costing more than what the allegations are initially, right?
Right. And so how does that really serve those who can, who may have committed a crime, for example, a DWI. A DWI, the program now, I think, costs upwards to $1,200 after you look at all the fees, et cetera, throughout the pendency of the case. That's cost prohibitive. The diversion programs also still require people to come into the system. I want to create diversion programs. I want to have pre-charge diversion options that actually allow folks not to have to come into the system. And that's because research shows that the majority of those low-level offenses that we take charges on are rooted in things such as poverty and homelessness and mental illness and substance abuse. And so I want to make sure that our reforms and diversion programs are dealing with root causes of crime. I think that's how we stop the influx of cases coming in. We stop contributing to mass incarceration, is we keep people out of the system. Pre-charge diversion can be done, but we need to be able to have that as an option. And I'm not saying necessarily that we don't need post-charge diversion programs as well, but we must include pre-charge diversion options because they can be very helpful in getting people on the right track.
Who'd be making these decisions? So one of a reoccurring issue that comes around are the decision-making powers of line prosecutors.
Yes.
All the way down from misdemeanors up to serious felonies. Yeah. Who will be making these decisions for maybe pre-charge or even post-charge diversion programs? And what says you on giving line prosecutors the power to make decisions? Because the old thing that we hear in Harris County is, oh, I don't know, I gotta run it up the flagpole, right? That's how it is now. Everything, hey, can you look at this? I don't know, I can't make a decision. I gotta run it up the flagpole. So let me ask you. Let's talk about the pre-trial or the pre-charge diversions. Who's making those decisions? Post-charge decisions. Who's making those decisions? And then also authority of line prosecutors to make decisions about dismissals or alternative recommendations.
Well, I think one of the main concerns at the DA's office right now is the backlog of cases, and like you said, the unwillingness of line prosecutors or their inability to make decisions. Everything has to be run up the flagpole, and it really slows down the pursuit of justice. And it's very frustrating for victims as well as defendants and those their defense attorneys. So I think the first thing that we have to do is we have to revisit the intake process.
Okay.
We have to bring our experienced prosecutors back to working intake. That is critical.
You mean you can't just put out like, we're hiring for intake and hire brand new lawyers to do intake for the largest county in Texas, one of the largest counties in the nations, and just arrest everybody and ask questions later?
No.
Oh, God.
Another softball, right?
Softball.
No, you cannot do that. And having been a prosecutor and worked the traditional system and seeing how the new system works, it's not efficient. You have to have boots on the ground experience. You have to have practical experience before you can be ready to accept those types of charges.
Sure.
You have to be able to look that officer in the eye or talk to him over the phone and say, no, sir, I'm not taking this charge, and this is why. In the interest of justice, I'm not doing this, or, what have you. Now, look, you need to give prosecutors clear guidelines to help inform their discretion. But when you have experienced prosecutors working intake, they know how it works. So bringing the experienced prosecutors back to intake, but I also want to establish a diversion desk at intake.
Interesting.
Yes, the diversion desk will, after we decide what those cases are that will qualify for either pre-charge diversion or, post-arrest diversion or what have you, that diversion desk will be able to tell the officer, where to take the person, what to do, and how to move. So what I'm trying to do is, again, decrease the number of people that come through this system, which decreases the number of cases our prosecutors have to work on, and allow us to reallocate our existing resources to focus on violent crime. That diversion desk will automatically be able to support the officers in helping them figure out what to do with that person who has committed a crime. Okay.
Or at least probable cause.
Or at least probable cause that a crime has been committed,
sure.
right? Allegedly.
Right,
allegedly. But then we'd also have a diversion unit. We'd also have prosecutors. So once we decide, okay, these cases are eligible for diversion, those prosecutors in that diversion unit will actually be the ones making the decisions on what programs and be able to help manage that. So your line prosecutors can focus on those cases
sure.
that need to be litigated, those serious violent crimes, and they can have more time with, smaller caseloads to be able to do that. We have to free up. We have to clean up they're overworked. And they have a lot of cases, but they also have a lot of cases that they either can't prove because they shouldn't have come in the first
sure.
place, or they don't have time to work on. And that's why I don't believe that just getting more prosecutors can solve the problem.
Right.
And I've been very vocal about that. And even before the first ask was made to Commissioner's Court, I did not want to go, and it's not a secret, I did not want to go ask for more prosecutors for the Family Criminal Law Division. I needed more prosecutors, and I asked for them to be allocated from within the office, because that division, the FCLD, handles between 2,800 to 3,000 cases a year. And before I wrote some grants to help expand it, we only had about 6 prosecutors handling that many cases.
That's incredible.
That's awful.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and so when you have those types of cases that need that attention, you need to figure out where you can pull from to staff those divisions so you can make sure that violent offenders are held accountable. But it's not with these low-level misdemeanor offenses, and creating that diversion desk will help that.
If you could figure out a way to divert half of these nonsense misdemeanor cases, because they end up getting dismissed anyway.
That's right.
They do.
That's right.
They just do. But if you could just eliminate half of them, the nonsense cases, because there's always going to be some nonsense cases that go through. But if you could figure out somebody who has the skills and the know-how and the experience to take the call from the officer and say, this needs to be diverted to this diversion desk,
yep.
or funnel, you would clear up some dockets. People could focus on cases that really matter.
Right.
That's pretty incredible. That's a good idea. It's the first kind of how-to I've heard on this show.
Well, it's important to have a how-to because you can, again, say policies and have procedures, but you got to know how to, you have to know how to put it into effect. And, my experience as a prosecutor, 15 years as a prosecutor and a defense attorney, and also my life experience. I grew up with, in poverty and very humble beginnings. So when Mama said there was no more money, there was no more money. But that didn't mean we couldn't still keep going. We had to find a way to keep going. We had to move forward. So our understanding doing more, moving forward, even when you don't have all the bells and whistles that you need. And at the end of the day, you need to keep moving that office forward. Prosecutors still have to seek justice on behalf of crime victims.
Sure.
Crime doesn't stop.
Sure.
Just because we don't get $20 million for prosecutors. And so
Right.
we have to think differently.
Do you think that, having 4 instead of 3 prosecutors in the court are better, or do you think that, should you have more prosecutors in the court?
I don't even know that that's the answer, honestly. I think one, diverting as many cases as possible. We have to maximize our diversion opportunities, and we're just not doing that right now. And then we have to look at restructuring the office. I am a big proponent of restructuring that office.
How?
We need to decentralize the office. Right now, everything funnels into the trial bureau,
Sure.
and it requires us to have 3 prosecutors per court. Why can't we look at a decentralized model that actually creates different units for different types of crimes? Homicide unit, domestic violence unit, vehicular crimes unit. You can then, based on the number of cases that are come in, pull your data, look and see, then make sure you have enough prosecutors in each one of those divisions to be able to have the experience, the time, the know-how to be able to handle each of those cases.
How are you
and then they float between the courts based on their assignments. But
How do you, one of the big issues that keeps reoccurring and popping up is the training.
oh yes,
Okay, so how do you plan, you have a massive office,
massive.
huge office, hundreds of prosecutors. How are you going to plan to effectively train everyone, have mentorship,
Yeah.
and have guidance? Do you have any, is that part of your restructuring of the
It
office? And do you have any ideas on that?
Absolutely. Training is needed. It's lacking, and that's definitely a priority. When I was at the office as a baby prosecutor, even though it wasn't always the best of times, training was a priority. They not only brought training in, but they also sent us out to get training, okay? I am going to create what I call the Harris County District Attorney's Office University. It is going to be a training program, a formalized training program. And so as prosecutors matriculate through the office, they'll have to take certain required courses and fulfill certain prerequisites before they can actually even be considered for promotion to the next level. And those courses would be commensurate with what type of cases that they would be trying as they move up the ranks. This will make sure that prosecutors are getting everything they need to be able to maximize justice for the victims and to make sure that the defendant's rights are not being trampled upon. You have to have a commitment to do it. Right?
Sure.
You have to have a plan, you have to have a commitment. I also want to work to make sure that they understand things like implicit bias, where and how that plays in when they're making their decisions. I want to teach them about the consequences of immigration. When someone who is a non-citizen and they take a plea, what does that look like? Or why they can't really take that pretrial diversion, because that still requires them to admit they're guilty, and that could still trigger deportation. So, hard skills, litigation skills, experience in the law, but soft skills as well to help them understand that, again, these are people that we are dealing with, not just a SPIN number, not just a case number, but that has to be a priority. So before anybody can even be promoted, they would have to take these courses. These courses are going to be taught by people from within the office, and we're going to be bringing in national experts, right? We're also going to be able to send people to training. Send people to trainings because there are people in other parts of this country that really are getting prosecution right. They figured it out. They're committed to this new level of criminal justice reform. And I want our prosecutors to always have the benefit of having the best and the brightest.
Let's talk about special units. So right now there's a big issue with special units, and sometimes if I know a case is going to get kicked to a special division, for example, family criminal law division.
Yeah.
If you got people in it, good people in it, and you know the prosecutor, okay, you're going to be like, okay, we can work this out. But let's talk about just a variety of units that were within the district attorney's office.
Okay.
I know that, I'm hitting 5 courts a day, and I have to sit there and wait, or I'm texting trying to figure out what special prosecutor is on which case, and it's a lot of time wasting. It just really
is. For everybody.
For everybody, for the courts, for the prosecutors, for me, for the coordinators, everybody's yelling at everybody. Where you at? Where you at?
Right.
That's a problem. You have any ideas on that?
Yes, I want to create an early plea unit. I want to create an early plea unit, and so we can work out as many cases or talk about our cases and staff the cases with each other, defense attorneys and prosecutors, before we go to court. We need to really have like a docket management system, almost like a docket control order like they have in civil court. I look forward to talking to the judges and working with the judges when I'm elected to help, figure out what that needs to look like. Because why are we having people come to court every month to get a reset? Because we know we don't have the body cam, or we know we don't have the video, or we know we still don't have that 911 tape. So if we know how long it takes to get our evidence, let's schedule our arraignment, our appearance, and then schedule some time out before we have to come back. But in the meantime, we can have early plea units that actually will allow defense attorneys to actually work with the prosecutors on non-court days to either resolve their case, talk about issues, or if there is no resolution, we set the case for trial. So we're using the court's time more efficiently, and we're not having to all sit around, twiddle our thumbs, and waste our time. Because I'm telling you, the prosecutors are sitting in court just waiting to sign resets for the most part in docket.
Right.
And they need to be able to work on their cases. Like you said, 5 different courts. The judges are upset, the coordinators are frustrated. It's just an antiquated system.
Right.
And we need to be able to have conversations about how we can change it and make it more efficient. I love efficiency. That is important. And again, that just facilitates a more swift justice process for everybody.
Carvana Cloud, the candidate of House, right? I mean, we only got like 10 minutes left. Can you believe that?
No.
So let's talk about something good and sexy. What do you think about marijuana?
Oh, well,
What's up with that? So, Adia Jones is coming in and saying no more marijuana, no more sex cases. She's gonna prosecute the traffickers. Okay. What says you?
Yeah, I'm not taking any marijuana cases. A cloud administration will not prosecute possession of marijuana cases. There's absolutely no link or nexus to those cases or that substance being a public safety threat or anything like that. And we are wasting taxpayer dollars greatly on the prosecution of those cases. Additionally, we cannot prove that the substance is marijuana in Harris County anymore. With the law that was enacted this summer, we don't know if the substance is, police officers are not able to tell just by looking at it if it's hemp or marijuana. And now that hemp is legal, it's impossible for us to prove it without the laboratory analysis. And right now, our county doesn't have access to that type of equipment. So I do not feel like it is just or worthy of taxpayer dollars to prosecute it, but we also can't prove it. So ethically, it's not something that I'm interested in prosecuting. And in regard to sex workers, I want to say this. Human trafficking is simply, we all know it's modern day slavery. If anybody has not gone just on Bissonnette at any given night after 10 o'clock to see what's going over there, I encourage people to do it because you would not believe you were still even in the city of Houston.
Sure.
We cannot turn our backs on those folks who are victims of human trafficking, and arresting them and charging them with crimes is not something that I'm interested in doing. Going after the traffickers to stop the proliferation of human trafficking, and even the buyers with prostitution, is a priority, because unless you dry up the demand for the sex, to buy sex, it's just going to keep going, and it's going to make the problem worse. But
I think that's the line that I think Adia is more. I'd say more or just over. There's a line that at least yourself and the conventional line of thinking is, look, nobody wants to prosecute the victims.
Right.
Nobody wants to prosecute anybody who's being sex trafficked, because it happens and we see it.
Yeah.
But what about the Johns? And it appeared that, I'm not saying, I'm not putting any words in anybody's mouth or anything, but it appears that maybe the Johns won't be prosecuted either. And I don't think it's going to be some big sex and marijuana free-for-all in Harris County if Miss Adia Jones is elected, but it appears, at least on what you're saying here, is marijuana, because ethically, I agree with you on that standpoint, that ethically, unless you can actually prove it, you shouldn't be arresting people for it and shouldn't be doing that. But at least for sex workers or sex crimes, Johns are still going. Nobody wants to prosecute victims, but Johns and traffickers are still going down.
You have to. I don't think you can get around it. And I want to say something about the prostitution arrests as well. Folks who are not identified as trafficking victims. It kind of goes back to what I was saying about the need to have more pre-charge diversion options, right?
Sure. Okay.
It's something I think that we need to be considering, especially for those like for first to second time prostitution cases, right? Why can't those be pre-charge diverted out of the system and maybe have a stair-step approach where you have maybe the third or fourth arrest, maybe that's a post-pretrial diversion opportunity and things of that nature. We just have to open our minds to think about different ways and be creative about doing it, because no one people very rarely are out there simply because they want to be. Okay,
Sure.
They're trying to survive. Prostitution is a crime of survival, and what you think, regardless of what you think about it, some people feel like that's the only way they have to support their family and to take care of themselves. But it goes back again to what I said about the need to address the root causes of crime. If you speak to somebody and they're saying that they're turning tricks because they need to feed their baby, they don't have a job or what have you, we need to figure out how we can support them in getting that, what they need to be successful, so they don't have to make that choice. But a lot of people, the lack of opportunity leads to criminality. So if somebody doesn't have access to opportunities, they're going to do whatever they need to survive. And prostitution is definitely one of those types of crimes. So I think we need to be sensitive about that and have other opportunities for us to be able to keep them, again, out of the system and help empower them to be better so they don't have to do that.
Let's talk about if Miss Carvana Cloud is the Harris County District Attorney for Houston, for Harris County, right? Prosecutors, there's a lot of fear because of what happened when Kemal came in.
Oh, yes.
Everybody's getting caught. Everybody's leaving. And granted, you can't predict the future. But what are your ideas regarding, in the event that you are elected? Are people going to be worried about their jobs or no, or what?
I mean, I think people are always going to be worried about their jobs, when you have a transition. But what I want people to know is that I am going to take my time in making those decisions. I was not privy to any of the decisions, the HR decisions that were made when we came in.
Right.
So I don't know how that was done. But it is important to me to be able to have conversations with people and to understand exactly where they stand. You need to give people a chance. We are all about giving second chances. And the prosecutors deserve that as well. So if there's any concern, I want to, encourage people to not be concerned, because I am a fair and I'm a fair person, and I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt. Where there is cause and where there are issues, I will even still have my transition team bring folks in and have those tough conversations. And they are tough conversations, but you need to have them. That's what professionalism, that's what leadership looks like. But I tell you what, I am very proud of the men and women that work at the Harris County District Attorney's Office. I'm very proud of them, and I would hope that when I am elected, that a lot of them will stay on and will be able to embrace and adopt this amazing vision I have to move the office forward in a very progressive, reform-minded way.
On the live wire, we have questions that are popping up.
Okay.
Regarding prosecutors moving to put people in jail. So, for example, state moves for bond forfeiture. And I can't wait. One day when a prosecutor says that again, state moves for bond forfeiture, I'm going to stand up and say, shut up. Shut up, man. It's not, and the coordinator's calling docket. All right? Number one. The other one is, the questions we have is when there are maybe positives for UAs, technical kind of stuff on a probation violation or even just a bond violation. The prosecutor's office has a very heavy say has some say as to whether or not when the defense attorney says, please don't put my guy in jail, the prosecutor can say, you know what, screw him, we'll go on the technical, it's over, judge, I'm with you. Or he's tested positive for marijuana, we're going to move for his bond forfeiture. I think the root of the question is about prosecutorial discretion.
Yeah. And
what needle or what way you're going to focus your team and your office on. And I think some of the questions is you guys just going to be hard on everybody?
Yeah, no, we're not. And I'll tell you what, that whole state moves for bond forfeiture, I never, ever understood why we were in that business, even as a baby lawyer, right?
Sure.
They train you to stand up and say that, but that is the judge's, that's in the judge's purview, that's in the judge's discretion. Let the judge do the judge's job. As far as revoking on technicals, I think that is one of the most oppressive policies that we've had as a prosecutor's office. My administration will not be moving to revoke and send people to prison or jail or revoke their probation because they have a dirty UA or because they haven't paid money. They absolutely will not. The root cause of that, again, is some type of substance abuse issue or indigency or poverty. And we got to get away from that. We need to be able to set people up for success on probations. I want to have I want to recommend shorter terms of probation. I'm not going to revoke on technicals. I'm not going to revoke for payment of fines or fees. That's what reform looks like in practice. It's not just this amorphous term. It actually is moving that needle towards making sure people are not always held down and oppressed for making mistakes. Now, I will tell you, where there is a new law violation that threatens public safety, or somebody has absconded or something like that, that's different.
Sure.
But if you're asking me that question about minor technical violations and things like that, there's absolutely no room for us to be that harsh. We have to be able to enforce the law, but extend empathy where needed. And when you're talking about these types of probations and issues that involve probation, like these technicals, empathy is needed there.
Carvana Cloud, the candidate of House. Who'd have thought? I mean, I know you're awesome, but you're killing it.
You have to have how. You have to understand how to implement. I think that was, the biggest, frustration of a lot of us, even in leadership in the DA's office, because there was no clear direction, no clear leadership about how to get things done. And you have to have that.
We got a couple minutes left, and when you came in, they said the rumor is, or the thought is, you're going to split the vote, you and Nadia.
No. Yeah,
And
I hear
so
that.
Kim's going to win. You're going to split the vote. You and Nadia are going to split it. What you say?
I am so offended by that comment.
I don't mean to be offensive.
No, it's not
that's
you.
What's going on.
It's the general comment, and I hear it all the time. And I'm going to tell you why. People have even said, oh, you and Nadia need to sit down and talk about it and just have one of you run. Back in the day, that was an issue, especially when white folks would pay other black folks to come in and split the vote. This is not what my candidacy is about, for sure. It definitely is not about that. And we have to give people more credit. We are in an era where we are able to run qualified people for multiple positions. And it is a wonderful thing. We have come a mighty long way. 2 black women are running for Harris County District Attorney.
Pretty amazing.
It's pretty amazing. It's historical. And neither one of us should be disenfranchised or told to sit down because it's 2 of us in a race. Nobody says that to 2 white women. Nobody says that to 2 white men. And nobody's definitely going to say that to me. We're going to run our race and may the best woman win.
Miss Cloud, gosh, she killed it today. I don't know what else to say. Are we wrapping now, or you got the last couple 30 seconds? You might as well just say whatever you want, because we got after you give it 30 seconds and we're out.
All right. I want to let everybody know that I am super excited about running to be your next Harris County District Attorney. I am a reform-minded and a reform-committed prosecutor, a former prosecutor and defense attorney who understands the need to balance reform as well as keep this community safe. I am the only candidate in this race that has a demonstrated ability to build bridges and work with law enforcement, community groups, and to bring people together in order to keep this county safe and make Harris County a safe and livable community for everybody. I'm asking for your vote in the primary because I know I can deliver true justice and to make sure that everybody in this county has a fair shake.
Jay Vela, Carvana Cloud for the Harris County Criminal Law Association. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jay.